Hey guys, BugCat7 here. It is Friday, March 2nd, 2018, and today we are going to get into part 3 of debunking mainstream history on the stone walls of New England. And if you haven't seen my part 1 and part 2 in this series of videos, please do check it out. Part 1 and part 2 is actually a two-parter. Please take a look at those. First one really goes through some of the available information from the government on the stone walls, and the second is really a recap of that and an analysis of the logistics and demographics of that time. So please do check out those videos, and of course check out my first two videos on the Mallory site in Sherman, Connecticut. That's really where you're going to see some very interesting things that you cannot see really anywhere else in any other videos on YouTube. Even, you know, Barbara DeLong's Secrets of the Stones, and Jim Vieira and Hugh Newman, and Creepy New England. Whatever you find in there, you're not going to see the kind of things that you see in my videos there from the Mallory Trail. Some very interesting things, including this effigy right here. You can see the eye here, and so anyway, check out my videos on my channel. I have other videos, other interesting videos on there, but you'll have to look for the ones on the stone walls. But please do check them out, because we do go into it quite a bit. And like I said, this is number 3 of this series. Okay, so this one is titled Debunking Mainstream History Stone by Stone, because we're going to focus on Robert M. Thorson's book Stone by Stone. And the reason why is because he is considered the expert on the New England stone walls, and he is the current expert. So we want to take a close look at this book. Okay, so it's not going to be an orthodox book review in the sense of, you know, mainstream media kind of analysis, but I'm going to give my own analysis of the book. Okay, so this book, in any case, it's a book about the stone walls of New England. If you're not familiar with it, you can read some stuff about it online. And this book, in my opinion, is really two books. It's a book about the geology of New England, in, you know, with relative to the Ice Age, which is really a separate book. That's one book. And the other book is actually about the stone walls. And the reason why I say that is because the relationship between the geology in the area and the stone walls is so remote. Yeah, there's a relationship there, but it is really very weak relationship there if you really want to look at it. So in any case, this is a book that's really a book about the geology of New England with you know, respect to the Ice Age, and it is a book about the stone walls. Okay, so, and that's, you know, even if you believe in the Ice Age, and you know, the reason why I say that is because if you don't know, and maybe you think it's a fact, but it's not a fact, it's a theory. And there has been people over time who question this theory. Certainly William Corliss was one of them, and Emanuel Velikovsky was another one to question this in his book Earth in Upheaval. And it's very interesting arguments made against it, and you know, tells you about the origination of the Ice Age, the theory of the Ice Age. And Harry Hubbard covers it in his video on his channel called The Next Ice Age. And you know, look, not everybody was on board, not every scientist was on board with this theory, regardless of what you feel about Velikovsky or Corliss or whatever. But you know, there were some criticisms, and Harry Hubbard goes over this in his video on his channel. I will leave a link in the description on this video, so you can link up with that video and take a look at that. So even if you believe you know, in the Ice Age, which I do not, and there's reasons for that, But look, the book is really a book about the geology of New England and the stone walls. Now, as far as the stone walls are concerned in this book, Thorson gives the sort of, regurgitates the history on it that, is more or less like a plagiarized feedback loop or whatever it is, they're just using this information, including the, 1872 agricultural Department of Agriculture Geological Land Survey. So, you're going to hear these things again and again in these books. And Thorson goes through that stuff too. And I mean, as far as the history is concerned on it, we have some big problems here. And so, I mean, if he's considered the expert on, the stone walls in New England, I think we really have a book that's really has very little information in it about the stone walls of New England. Now, he goes over the stone walls in New England. He identifies 4 of them, as I mentioned in my previous videos. And, you heard what my take on it is, my observations of it. And, look, he's probably right on, at least on some level, he's right about there's 4 different ones, and he goes through the construction, et cetera, et cetera. But, even, to take his word for it over somebody like Kevin Gardner, who I mentioned his books before in the previous video, his family's been doing it for generations, and, I would take his word over Thorson's word because he's doing it, and he understands a lot about the stone walls, how they broke down, etc., etc. My own observations of this, many of the stone walls that you'll see in the areas of let's say I would say on the coastal areas of Connecticut, Massachusetts, Long Island, New Hampshire. I mean, on these coastal areas where the best areas for farming and some of the oldest farms can be found, especially here on Long Island. I mean, Long Island is absolutely one of the best places to grow anything in the United States. The soil is so rich here. Long Island potatoes once were on the plates of everybody in this country. Forget about Idaho potatoes. Long Island potatoes were really, and Long Island sweet corn is unbelievable corn. But along these areas, you're going to find where the best stone walls are built. But in these remote mountain areas of New York, where these primitive stone walls are built and everything, it's a completely different story. So in any case, we're going to get into Robert Thorson's book a little bit, and there's a couple of things that he said in there that I took issue with. And one of those things was he did a couple of interviews. I think one was, for Yankee Magazine, and another one was for Earth Magazine. Now, I read these articles some years back already, and I mean, I've been dealing with this for a couple of years here. And one of the factoids in this interview with Thorson by this author here, John Manuel Andriot, one of the factoids that was in this article, which I mean you can find in his book as well, is this thing here that says, it says monumental effort here. Although the oldest documented stone wall in New England dates to 1607, made by English settlers of the Virginia Company along the estuary of the Kennebec River north of Portland, Maine. Okay, so this was a factoid that was given in this article here, and when I read that, I questioned that. And I contacted this, the author of this journalist, John Manuel Andriot, and I said to him, I said, I don't understand, it says it's the oldest documented case, but it makes no, it makes no mention of where this information comes from. Now, I don't know if Thorson got that from somebody else, or he's just decided to put in, that in there. But there's no footnote there to say where this information has been gotten from. And the only place that this could be that he's referring to in 1607 would be that area in Maine, would be the Popham Colony. Now, the Popham Colony, I researched this. I just hammered the library, and I looked into everything. I read everything I possibly could on the Popham Colony, and that's a whole different video to get into and everything, because there's been much conjecture about the Popham Colony for many, many years, where finally archaeology was done in the early 2000s, of which I read the archaeological report done by the University of Maine. And from what I gathered about the whole thing is that, there's reason to question whether this colony ever even existed or what it was or anything like that. Basically, the archaeological report done by the University of Maine, the main archaeologist was rah-rah, we found it or whatever. And the second archaeologist, the guy who was not leading but was second, said that they found like nothing. And I read the report. I read the whole report, and they found nothing, okay? So this is ridiculous. And it's based on also this map of a star fort. Here's the star fort that they based their archaeology on, and there is no evidence of a star fort of this magnitude there. And if anybody knows anything about star forts, okay, here's some star forts for you, okay? There's no evidence of a star fort at the location where they say the Popham Colony was. There's nothing there. Another fort was built there in the 1800s, but there is no evidence of a star fort there. But they're willing to base all the archaeology on this map, which shows a star fort, and the star fort is substantial here. Look, there's brick and block walls and everything. So based on this map of a star fort that's non-existent, and this map, that wasn't even the first map, I believe, that they even got of the colony there. It's like a Hardy Boys adventure. They got it from some Spanish marquis who stole it, and it was espionage, and it's a bunch of baloney. I read everything on this I possibly could. I looked through everything. I cannot find anywhere where there is documented evidence of the first stone wall being built in 1607 at the Popham Colony. There is no reference to it whatsoever that I can find. And as I said, I don't know where Thorson is getting this information from, whether it's he came up with it himself or he got it from somebody else that I just somehow have not read, or, and I've read everything on this subject, so many different books and everything, and college research. I went through everything on this, and I cannot find the reference. So I said to the fella there at Earth Magazine here, the journalist, I said, look, I said, you're a journalist, you have resources. I can't seem to find where this documented evidence is of stone wall being built in Kennebunk, Maine, at the Popham Colony. I cannot find that. I said, maybe you can, okay? I said, but I don't think this is good journalism, He didn't ask, where he got this information from. Where is the proof of this? You just say it, a first stone wall was built. Based on what evidence? There's nothing there. So in any case, I researched for literally a month trying to find this documented evidence of the first stone wall being built in 1607, and I am not able to find it. If anybody out there can find it, please let me know, and I'll take it all back. But, you know, I put this journalist to task. I put Yankee Magazine to task on this subject with Thorson. And, you know, if you're going to make a claim like that, you know, have a footnote, have something in there. And, you know, all these articles, by the way, Yankee Magazine article here and the Earth Magazine article here, they all mention this, you know, survey, the 1872, without going into any, without qualifying at all. Again, you know, like I said in my last video that I had to spend 15 minutes on going over it again to answer some of the people who you know, had some problems with it. One of the fellas was a guy in New England who built stone walls, and he called me without even, I could tell he didn't even watch the whole video, okay, because it was simple as this. He said, well, I can tell you how that's done. If one guy works 300 days, and I'm like, buddy, you're missing the point of my video. How, you know, you're trying to explain a mathematical fiction, okay, like a legal fiction. This is a mathematical fiction right here of 15,000 men working 200. This is a mathematical fiction, so you're trying to explain it with another mathematical fiction of a man working 300 days, you know, at 12 hours, or whatever it is. That's the whole point of that video was to put it into more realistic terms, to take it out of the fantasy world and put it into reality, you know? I mean, even this is a fiction too. I mean, you can't work 12 hours a day at some parts of the year because of, you know, the light and it's fall or whatever. You can't even work, you know, and the physical limitations of it. That was the point of my last couple of videos. So this guy missed the whole point, and he wants to explain a mathematical fiction with another mathematical fiction, and he said it can't be done. You're going in the wrong direction. We're trying to put it into more realistic terms, and my point is that the closer you got to more realistic terms, the closer that you got to reality, that it would take thousands of years for them to complete all of these stone walls. And where we're talking about predominantly is in the areas of New York and New England. And, you know, this whole thing about how, you know, New York isn't New England and all this kind of stuff. Well, Vermont was part of New York at one time, okay? And when it was New Netherlands,